There are 8 Star Wars games currently in development right now, including 2 incredible looking titles coming out this year, and then there are 6 other titles that should come out eventually, assuming they survive their long development cycles and don't get cancelled. I am Lord Niraj, and let's talk about the future of Star Wars. Star Wars Zero Company is up first. This is a tactics game being developed by Bit Reactor under Respawn Entertainment and EA, with the same writers as the Jedi games. This was announced back in 2022 alongside Jedi Survivor and a now canceled Star Wars first-person shooter game. Its first trailer was shown in 2024. It has been heavily advertised with its ideas of having gameplay that can be very in-depth without having to sacrifice the immersion or the elegance of its presentation, as well as the characters, the tension between members, and the impact your decisions will have on the story. And they picked an incredible setting for all of this. It takes place in the shadows of the Clone Wars, which has the best opportunities to have themes of corruption, gray morals, and a large variety of different personal motivations, all in the name of getting the job done. You'll play as Hawks, who will be very customizable, everything but his name, I guess. You'll choose his race, his class, and he runs a squad of customizable and scripted characters that you will have to manage and put together. You could have a full team of astromechs if you would like, though that probably wouldn't be the most strategic plan. I hope they can live up to the promises and the ideas they have put out here, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, I'm not much into racers, but if there was one that wasn't ran by a plumber, that would strike my interest, it would be the following. Star Wars Galactic Racer. This is being developed by Fuse Games, which is a new studio ran by ex-Citron leads, who were the people behind the Burnout and the Need for Speed games, as well as the vehicle portions for EA's Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefield games. The Burnout games are greatly known for their collisions, wrecks, and the Need for Speed games known for their street racing and avoiding the cops and high stakes. But both are known for the high speeds and arcadic controls. And the Galactic Racer seems that it could be a blend of the two, with the exception of this being run-based. Now, whether that means roguelike or just simply you could lose and have to start all over again is unknown. Based off the studio's previous work, you will more than likely start with a garbage speeder, whether that be a speeder bike, land speeder, or this new skiff speeder. And across the run, you will either upgrade, trading, or be putting your rod on the line in order to get better and faster, and eventually have the chance at racing against everybody's favorite racer, Sebulba, and his iconic pod racer. Now, the inclusion of pod racers have been elusive. The only mention of it was the blurred shape of Sebulba's iconic pod, followed by the sound of the same racer. It's also unclear of the law enforcement or how much of the Need for Speed influence is actually there. Timeline-wise, this takes place after the fall of the Empire, who outlawed racing. So whether or not the New Republic is going to enforce these no racing laws, or maybe you're outrunning Imperial remnants, is a little up in the air. In fact, most of this game is very unclear, as all we really have is a single cinematic trailer and a brief description of the game, as well as the developer's track record. But that is also just about as much, if not more information than we have on the rest of the titles we're about to talk about. But that doesn't mean the other titles don't have some eventful stories behind them. Back in 2021 came the announcement of Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic remake. It was being backed by Sony and being developed by Aspyr. Oh, what a fun name. So Aspyr doesn't have the greatest track record, and that kind of started here. Up to this point, Aspyr was only really known for their bare-bone ports of older Star Wars titles, mainly to Switch. Star Wars titles like Star Wars Racer, Republic Commando, the Jedi Knight games, and then around the time of the KOTOR remake announcement, they were porting over the original titles to Switch when it came. And when it came to the second, they promised bringing over the cut content that was lost and currently really only available through mods on PC. They were cut from the KOTOR remake project, and no lost content DLC was brought over the Switch 2 version of KOTOR 2. Are these two incidents connected? I don't know, because information hasn't really came out about either incident, or what exactly happened. Though some images of the Aspyr version of the remake has been leaked, and it looked fine. There wasn't really much, but a couple of early renders of a Vibroblade, a couple of blasters, and a couple of portions of the Endar Spire. That's the ship that you start on. But the project is now in the hands of Saber Interactive, and Sony has backed out of the project, hopefully meaning console exclusivity is gone. But that's not a guarantee. In terms of updates, all we really have is a Twitter post from Tim Willits, the creative chief officer of Saber Interactive, that says, all announced projects by Saber Interactive are still in development. Now, I do think, or maybe just hope, that we will hear about this game again sometime this year, and the title comes out following. And I think I just simply want that to happen because the way I see it, it is the only way in which it is possible to get both this remake and a remake of the second before Fate of the Old Republic, which we'll talk about right after Eclipse. The title was announced back in 2021 at the Game Awards, and that's it. That's all the information there is. Yes, there was a cinematic trailer letting us know it was in development by Quantic Dreams, the one behind Heavy Rain and Detroit Become Human, and timestamping the title in the High Republic era before the Clone Wars. We saw a couple of unknown species and groups, mainly focusing on a clan of grayed out avatar-looking creatures that lost their noses, playing the drums ceremoniously to awaken or create some sort of black creature during an eclipse, hence the name. But that's really just an audio description of the trailer. But the trailer wasn't actually released for you or me. It was released with the sole purpose of drawing interest, enlisting, and hiring people, putting together a team to actually make the game. So, we have no idea if the game is actually going to look anything like the original trailer. All we know is that it is a story-rich title where you play as multiple charismatic characters with branching story paths that will greatly impact the outcome of the game. Well, that just described every title I've mentioned so far, aside from the Racer. Now, the project is said to be alive and well, despite the team also announcing and working on Spellcaster Chronicles, a multiplayer game. But this title has been in the public eye for 5 years, without a word. And that is kind of why I'm a little underwhelmed when it comes to the next title. For what should be the biggest Star Wars announcement possible, FOTOR, which sounds a little better than KOTOR. Fate of the Old Republic is a spiritual successor to the original KOTOR games, directed by Casey Hudson, the lead director of both the original KOTOR games and the Mass Effect series. He was also involved in Anthem, but that is a different story, and the game is no longer playable, so it's as if the game never even existed. FOTOR is not a direct sequel to the original two, though. It is set to take place on a galaxy on the edge of rebirth, implying this is the end of the Old Republic era. And on the Star Wars timeline, that's about 1,000 years after the events of KOTOR 2 and 1,000 years before the Phantom Menace, meaning according to the Star Wars timeline in Ki-Adi-Mundi, this is the last time the Sith are to be seen until Maul reveals himself to the Jedi. You will play as a Force user where every decision will deepen your journey toward the light of the darkness. I think that's the last time I have to give that description for a game today. Now, this being a treasured franchise and game series, it is being met with some concerns, more than I can really put in this video, but the main one is that they plan to make this game in only 4 years. Before 2030 is the line that Casey Hudson is uttering, and the studio was put together mid last year, and that would leave a 4-year window. Now, I do believe in terms of the game's direction, Hudson has more than likely been bouncing around the idea, what if he got to make another KOTOR? It has been well over 20 years since KOTOR 2. But I can't think of a modern AAA release from the last decade that was a top-tier game and developed in less than 5 years that didn't heavily rely on reused assets. But there's not really anything we can do but wait and hear nothing for at least 3 to 4 years. And then we can hear whether or not the game is coming out, being delayed, just like all the other projects we're waiting on, as long as they don't get canceled. Speaking of canceled projects, Amy Hennig is taking a second shot at a Star Wars game. Hennig is the writer and the director of the Uncharted series, as well as the Legacy of Kain games, and she is currently working on Marvel 1943. As well as an untitled Star Wars game under the same studio, that being Skydance Interactive. But this was not her first attempt at a Star Wars title. Project Ragtag was her first attempt, where development started in 2013, had 8 seconds of footage shown in 2016, and was later canceled in 2017 with the closure of Visual Studios. And now, back in 2022, there was an announcement that Henning was working on a new Star Wars project alongside of Marvel's 1943, which was announced the year prior, and footage was shown last year for the Marvel project, and is coming out maybe at the end of this year, early next. So, no idea about the Star Wars project. And that would leave 2 other titles. The third and final entry to the Jedi series. There's no information on that, and I wouldn't really expect to see it soon. Respawn is finishing up Zero Company, so I don't expect it till at least next year. And then the other is a collectible card game, which again has no information aside from it is in development with 036 Studio, a new developer, and CCG Lab, who previously developed a DC Dual Force. I had never heard of it, and that is probably because it only lasted 7 months back in 2023. It looked like it was buggy, poorly balanced, and so the game died. So I don't really have much hope for that title. And that's 8 Star Wars projects currently in development. I personally really only wish we knew about like 2 of them, the ones coming out this year, at least with the information we have right now. I might not be able to complain a whole lot about the 3 that are just written announcements, but the KOTOR remake and Eclipse, those were both 5 years ago with no word since their reveal trailer, and FOTOR is seeming to bound to follow suit. In my opinion, most circumstances, I don't really think a game should be announced unless it's like at most 2 years off from completion and release. Because now we're left to wonder whether these projects are even going to make it to release. No idea what generation of consoles they'll launch on, and every game is believed to have troublesome development. Now, in terms of the currently announced titles, I do doubt that any of these will get canceled. All of the games, except for the 2 EA titles, are being developed by independent studios. So there isn't a parent company to just shut them down. The studio, it would only really be Disney themselves who did supposedly kick Aspyr off the KOTOR project, but they didn't cancel the project outright. But anyway, I've done my job. I've informed you of the 8 Star Wars projects, and now it's time for your job to let me know what you think about these Star Wars projects. Or do you think any of them are coming soon? Or do you want to hear my full opinions on the FOTOR? But that's all for me for now. Bye.